This is NDTV. And you're watching NDTV 24/7.
Indra Nooyi, what a pleasure it is to talk to you as somebody who's dear to India, dear to America, and so well known across the globe. The big attention right now, the world's attention, is on President Obama's visit. You're one of the CEOs who accompanied him. There are those who are quipping that Barack Obama is here more as CEO of the United States of America than president. So is it all about the money, honey?
Well, you're making it sound like the CEOs only go money hunting. That's not true. Look, I hope the President of the United States is also CEO of the country, because at the end of the day, a president has to worry about the politics, the economics, he has to worry about all of it. And so, wooing business, making sure jobs are maintained in the country is as much a job of the president as is national security, as is the health of the people. So he has to go out there and make sure that you spread the economic message of the United States to the other parts of the world, so that there's economic prosperity in the United States and in other parts of the world. And I think he's doing that job right now in India, and he's doing it well.
The president comes here after a tough political time domestically, and in his own political environment in America, sometimes his critics have sneeringly dubbed him to be too left of center, too much of a socialist. How important is it, you think, for him to carry back a pro-business message for his own country?
As a CEO of a large company, clearly we need policies in the US government that are pro-business, because at the end of the day, we all work within a framework of a country's policies. And in the first couple of years of the Obama presidency, the business community has been at odds with the White House, has been at odds with the policies of the president. And so, whether it's industry organizations, whether it's individual CEOs, we've all had many conversations with the president. And the president himself, after the elections, has come out and said, perhaps I have not been as friendly to business as I should have been. And I think we're going to see a definitely different mood in the next couple of years from the president, because he knows intellectually that business is very, very important. I think we're going to start seeing much more of an outreach to business, because at the end of the day, if big business survives and thrives, lots of small businesses are created, because it's a big ecosystem. So I think we've got to make sure that in the United States, the president sets a policy direction that, first of all, lauds big business and thanks them for what they do, and not let the mistakes of a few taint the good work of the many.
And do you think to that extent that there will be a course correction, and how much of that do you see reflected in the statements you've heard from him so far in India?
It's interesting. In his first 2 years as president, I've had the opportunity of being in many roundtable discussions with him. And in those meetings, I have not seen him to be particularly anti-business. In fact, he's been pro-business in those meetings. I think he's inherited the presidency during a very, very tough time. And there was some corporate malfeasance that he had to deal with, and then he had to deal with an economy that was in trouble. And during that time, he didn't come across as pro-business. And I'm sure he himself realized that something had to change going forward. So I think going back now to the United States, we're going to see a different tone from the White House based on what he said publicly. And in these 2 days here in India, his outreach to business couldn't have been more positive. It's the best I've seen from him.
He's also spoken about the need for open trade between India and the US, and how India too has to lift trade barriers, and that it can't be a one-way street. As somebody who's Indian American, in a sense, 1 foot here, 1 foot there, do you believe India hasn't done enough, that there is a little too much maybe a little bit of a double speak, because we often dub Obama to be protectionist, but we have a reasonably protectionist economy ourselves.
Look, the one thing I'm realizing, running a company is much easier than running a country, because I don't have to worry about the politics. I don't have to worry about bringing opposition parties along. And when a CEO decides to enact a decision, we just do it. That's the wonder of running a private enterprise. When presidents and prime ministers have to enact policy that may be popular in one part of the parties and not in the other, it's a much more complex environment. So for me to comment on whether India is protectionist and whether it's right or wrong, or whether the United States is protectionist, whether that's right or wrong, would be way over my college degree. And I say that because as a business person, I might say it's too protectionist or not. But if I were a politician, I might say this is the only way that India can progress, because I have to protect certain industries. And the same thing for the United States. So I think it's too complex an issue to ask a simple CEO to comment on it. All that I say is globalization is good. We've spent years trying to get to globalization. Let's not reverse globalization in a short time. And for global companies like ours, it is critically important that the advances that have made in globalization not be set back.
But you know, some of the specific issues that are raised, whether it's opening up insurance or retail, this is something that the United States of America raises again and again. You've chaired the US-India Business Council previously. You're a big part of the CEO's delegation here. Do you believe that India needs to do more to open up the economy? And you've often spoken in the past about infrastructure, for example, being such a sort of an area with so many gaps.
I think there's so much opportunity in India. There's so much opportunity for partnership, for investment. I mean, there's just, India's a market. I think the next 2 decades are just brilliant decades for India. But the decision that India has to make is, are you going to do it at a pace that is very slow and very deliberate? Or are you going to do it at a faster pace? Because at some point, the wealth has to trickle down. And the only way you're going to get the trickle-down effect is if you enact certain movements faster. So let's take infrastructure. I think infrastructure implementation in India has got to be much faster than it is today, because you need infrastructure to address so many issues in society. Food, if you want to get food to people quicker and not have 40% of it waste, you need roads, you need chilled trucks, you need all of that to get to the population faster. So infrastructure improvements have to happen pretty fast. The only way it's going to happen is if you get foreign investment into the infrastructure market, you set up some sort of an infrastructure fund. The opportunities have all been laid out. Again, I come back. At the end of the day, the Prime Minister has to make sure he gets it through the political system so that there aren't more critics than there are supporters. So I don't believe it's the thought that's lagging. It's the will of a democratic system to make it happen. This is the problem with democracy. The good and the bad of democracy.
And then some would say, and it's a key market for Pepsico, that the China model works better. But in India, we love our democracy with all its pitfalls.
Oh, absolutely. I think, look, here's the issue. When you have a central government, a centralized government,
federal authority, yeah,
and democracy. In a democracy, anything you take away is considered terrible. Yeah. When you have a centrally run government, anything you give them by way of freedom is considered wonderful. So this is the issue that we're facing. You know, both are models that, you know, historically have evolved. I grew up in free India. I like democracy.
Yeah, and in America now, and there is that whole coincidence of philosophy.
Absolutely.
You said that you're a CEO and you don't run a country, but elsewhere you've also said that actually PepsiCo is like running a country, isn't it?
It is. I mean, companies the size of PepsiCo are little republics. There's no question about it. The only difference is that I don't have to worry about the media hounding me every day on every word that I say. I have a board of directors that runs the company in the interest of the stakeholders. I don't have to worry about bringing warring factions together all the time. And I'm not running for election every 2 years. Okay? So I have a very different dynamic. And when I say something, it is enacted in the company. I don't have to constantly get a vote on everything that I do. I think it's a much more difficult job that they have.
But at a time when, in America at least, as you said, that President Obama shouldn't let a few bad examples cast a shadow on the rest of big business. But the fact is that there is now a kind of public scrutiny on big money in a way that it wasn't there before, which is why you have all these mythologized Wall Street One and now Michael Douglas in a sequel, right, with all this sort of greed is good mantra. At this time, you're actually trying to steer PepsiCo into a different direction. You're speaking global nutrition, you're speaking responsibility. The cynics would say when big companies do this, it's kind of like CSR. It's tax saving, it's to look good. How serious are you about making PepsiCo health friendly?
We've published our commitments in our annual report. We were the first company to go out there and last year in the annual report lay out all of our commitments for the next 10 years. Bold move, okay, because now people are going to hold us accountable for those commitments. I did it because I didn't want people to think performance with purpose, which is the direction of the company, was just a set of words. We wanted to show clearly that it was backed by actions and actions that could be monitored on a regular basis, because now you can go to our website and it tells you exactly what our progress is. In fact, in India, they've just published the most brilliant report which takes every one of those gatefold commitments, links it to India and says exactly what have we done in India to deliver on each of those commitments. I reviewed that report yesterday. I'm going to make it the model for the rest of PepsiCo because it's one of the most brilliantly done reports. Anybody who reads that will never, ever be cynical about what PepsiCo is doing. In fact, I'll go so far as to say, if every food and beverage company could be as responsible as PepsiCo, the whole food chain will be much better.
But did you decide at some point to deliberately steer PepsiCo in a different direction, whether it was, acquiring products like Tropicana or health, the health genre more? You've set a timeline for pulling out carbonated drinks from schools. Now, isn't that playing a huge gamble with profit? You're taking it away from young students who are a key market.
Not really, because I think the most important thing that a food and beverage company should be doing is looking at changing lifestyles and adapting your portfolio for those lifestyles. Okay? What are we doing in our product portfolio? We're saying to younger people, we're going to give you 0-calorie beverages. Okay? They taste as good as the full sugar beverage. So if you want to drink a full sugar beverage, that's fine. But if you're health conscious, or you should be health conscious, here's a 0-calorie product that tastes exactly the same. So if you have a Pepsi or a Pepsi Max, the Pepsi Max, in fact, tastes phenomenal, right? So that's our...
Which one do you have?
Pepsi Max. I actually, to be honest, I drink both. One day I might just pick up a Pepsi, I like it. Some other day I might pick up a Pepsi Max. The whole idea is balance. We want to give you balance. But what we are basically telling you is we're going to take the fun for you part of the portfolio, make it better for you. Reduce saturated fat. We took out trans fats, reduce sodium levels, reduce sugar levels. And while we're doing that, we also want to give you positive nutrition. Ultimately, I can't force you to eat that.
You don't see that as a business gamble that could eat into profits?
Not at all, because you're assuming that nutrition products are less...
For young kids who are hooked onto their carbonated drinks.
But the products have to taste great. I can give you a juice that tastes fantastic. I can give you a 0-calorie product that tastes fantastic. As long
it's
as
like finding a way of broccoli to taste good.
That's exactly right. Sneaking goodness to you.
Yeah.
And you know what? Even drinking a sugar soft drink now and then is nothing wrong with it. The only issue is lifestyles have changed today. I grew up in India too, in Chennai. I'd walk to school. I played every day. Nowadays, I look at the playgrounds, they're all gone. People don't walk to school anymore. They're actually school buses that take you to school. So what happens to these kids?
Or private chauffeured cars, which is even worse. Yeah.
I think lifestyles have changed so much that we have to worry about.
You've spoken quite often of how you have to think globally but act locally, and that being a sort of key leadership mantra that you believe in. Do you think that a lot of that for you in PepsiCo comes from the fact that you are multicultural, much like the visiting president? And that multiculturalism perhaps brings a completely different perspective on how you look at business?
Could be. I think that the CEO of the future has to be very, very globally aware and globally sensitive because, in the past, a lot of the locus of business was more in the West. And I think in today's world, it's becoming more diffused. And the growth is happening largely east of the Middle East. And basically what you've got is a power diffusion that's going on from a traditionally Judeo-Christian world to a multi-religion world. It's going from a place where there was clear separation of church and state to a set of countries where sometimes there isn't a clear separation of church and state. So you've really got to understand this new world very, very differently. So I'd say the CEO of the future has got to be one that understands that the new world and where the new power is, where the growth is happening, is radically different from the West. And therefore, we are training our people to look at Asia not just as, oh, there's an opportunity, but understand Asia for its glory, for its richness, for its diversity, because strategies that you develop for this part of the world has got to be radically different than strategies for the West. And the statement
Give us an
made,
example of this kind of regional adaptation that you've had to do.
So, when we get to, Africa, Asian countries, we have to worry about the overnourished, but also have to worry about the undernourished. Okay? We have to worry about flavoring systems that are vastly different. We worry even about the emergence of local medical systems, whether it's traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda in India. The way people think about what's good for you is very different than how the West thinks about it, okay? When you look at ginger, you don't question its clinical properties, you assume it's good for you.
Yeah.
In my home, you get sick for anything, my mom gives me a piece of ginger and says, just put it in your mouth, it's okay.
Absolutely.
So you have to marry the muscle and skeleton of a large company with the wisdom and soul of every country. And that's the challenge. And if you don't do that, you'll end up with a homogeneous model, which is not sustainable long term.
China and India have often been described by your company as must-invest markets, and completely different markets, completely different cultural strands. Do you have a completely different approach to both of these markets?
Yeah, we, as I said, the muscle and skeleton is the same, but the way we think about products in China, we have traditional Chinese medicine products. I spent a couple of weeks in China last summer. The first day I was there, I spent half a day at the Traditional Chinese Medicine Institute, trying to understand what were the underpinnings of traditional Chinese medicine. And so the way we approach China, the product portfolio, it's more of a non-carbonated market than a carbonated soft drink market. There's more soft snacks and sweeter snacks. So we look at China completely differently. The flavoring systems are completely different in China. In India, you've seen the product portfolio. I mean, a kurkure is in India. Only now it's getting adapted in the West, but with different flavors.
Do you eat kurkure?
Oh, a lot of it.
Yeah.
A lot of it. I mean, look, it's a must-have snack.
It is.
And, but now we're adapting kurkure in other parts of the world, but done differently. But, with the core product that India has. So in India, too, we look at products differently that are adapted for the Indian consumer. Sliced mango is something that's, a phenomenal drink. But mango is not a flavor that's easily liked by many people in the West. People in Latin America like it, but we do a lot of mango in India.
You said in the beginning that globalization the process must not be reversed. But one of the pitfalls of globalization is possible homogenization of cultures and traditions. And what you're describing is actually that variety or that heterogeneous strand still existing in the world. And I have to ask you this, after the global recession, isn't there a danger of globalization and capitalism both becoming slightly bad words? And to that end, India's slightly cautious approach to capitalism, is that a better model for the world today?
Look, I'm never faulting any country's model because each country evolves a model that's right for that country. And India has been cautious on capitalism forever, okay? And it served the country very well during the bad times, but the country also needs to accelerate some of the developments happening in the country so that the bottom of the pyramid doesn't get left out. It's great that you're getting a huge middle class and the rich are getting richer. That's all great. But I think if you want the trickle down, if you want the bottom 300 or 400 million, the size of the bottom of the pyramid is bigger than the whole population of the United States. But if you want that part of the country to be served, I think some of the pace of changes have to pick up. But who am I to say? I don't run the country, okay? I'm just giving you a capitalist's point of view. I think the opportunities are huge. I think each country should evolve capitalism for itself. But capitalism and protectionism are not the same. Okay? I think you should evolve your own brand of capitalism, but don't retreat into protectionism, because the free flow of ideas, the free flow of capital, you can put some controls, but the free flow
or regulations.
Yeah, you can regulate it, but it's the free flow of ideas, free flow of capital, free flow of people that's going to really lift the world in profound ways.
To that end, do you think that President Obama has fought the outsourcing demon successfully enough on this trip?
I think we're making too much out of the outsourcing debate. I think we should put it aside. The president was very clear in saying, look, we have to tell the whole story to the American people. It's not a zero-sum game. We shouldn't talk about it in those terms. Clearly there was a time in the last 12 months or so where there was all kinds of labels put on the outsourcing debate. Let him go back. Let him take on this issue and talk about it. But outsourcing is a complex issue. When you give a job to IBM and IBM has the job done in IBM India, is that outsourcing? I don't know. I don't know what outsourcing is anymore. So I think it's a complex issue. It played well in the political process, but I think sanity has to come back to everybody.
You said earlier, who am I to talk about capitalism except in my capacity as a capitalist and CEO of a company? But you were widely tipped to be an economic advisor inside the White House. Is that still an option that you'd be open to?
I don't know who comes up with these names.
Us in the media.
Don't. I'm a happy CEO.
But you can be a happy CEO and then move on to other things.
Not yet. I think I want to be CEO for many years. I'm only 4 years into the CEOship. We're in the midst of a profound change at Pepsico, a fantastic change at Pepsico, and I'm enjoying it. And let me do this job some more time, please.
But in the not yet, does one see a potential future engagement with public policy and politics?
Not politics.
Public policy?
Public policy, yes. I want to give back. I think the US has been enormously good to me. I often say that I am where I am today because of the incredible meritocracy that the United States is.
So you could see yourself as an advisor in the White House, if not now, in the future?
That's a political appointee, no. I can see myself, doing a commission or doing something meaningful to say thanks. But I don't see myself in the political arena. I'm too outspoken, and I will not serve any president well.
You don't think outspoken people do well in government? You don't think
No.
presidents need outspoken aides?
In the inner circle, yes, but I just say it like it is all the time. It's not a good thing.
What's the one thing you've been outspoken about as CEO that you've regretted or had to regret? Are you too outspoken as a CEO, you think?
I speak my mind out. Yeah, I think so. I don't know any other model. That's the problem.
And has it sometimes landed you in trouble?
People like you repeat everything I say back to me.
Now, not just are you outspoken, but apparently you sing aloud in the corridors of your organization as well.
Oh, these are such myths, come on.
Is it not true? It
No,
sounded
not
fabulous.
at all. No, I don't sing loud,
Walk barefoot, sing aloud. It sounded like one
There are days
nice hippie image inside a multinational corporation.
There are days that the heel starts to hurt. I just kick off my shoes.
I can empathize with that feeling.
So I kick off my shoes, by 5 or 6, when the heels start to hurt, I kick off my shoes and walk bare feet. But that's not a big deal. Nobody else is in the office at that time. And as for singing loudly, I don't sing loudly. I might hum a tune at times when I'm thinking about something. But that's all fine. I just do it.
Yeah.
And people will ask me, what song are you humming? I'll tell them what it is, and they'll just go on their merry ways. That got amplified into singing loudly in corridors. I have no idea where this came from.
If it's a myth, it's a great myth, I have to tell you. But it probably goes back to being in the all-girls rock band in Madras.
That's true.
Yeah?
That's true.
Do you still pick up a guitar and strum at times?
It's interesting. When I was growing up, we didn't have much money. I just owned one guitar. It was sort of rinky-dinky guitar. So once I got to the States and got some money, I bought every possible guitar I could, and people gifted me lots of guitars. So I must own about 10 guitars now, of every kind, 6-string, 12-string, acoustic, electric, of every kind. I probably pick a guitar up once in 3 months for 5 or 10 minutes. You know why? Because you have to cut my nails to play the guitar. I'm too vain to. I have no time. I just don't have time.
But you do have, and like you said, you're a blunt person. You also have a very individual approach to being CEO. And I read this fabulous account of how after a trip to your home, and when you met your mother and you had to sit there and look pretty and meet all the neighbors and die of boredom initially, but then you went back, and that made you decide to write to the parents of every employee.
Not every employee.
Or
my
key
direct
employees.
reports.
Yeah. What made you do that?
Because I realized that once you cross your high school days in the United States in particular, you don't get a report card on your kids. And my own kids, my first one, once she crossed 18, I didn't get any report card on her. I'd ask her, how are you doing in college? I paid for college, but she'd say, I'm doing fine. That's all I got. No report card, no grades, no nothing. And then I looked at all the executives around me and said, my goodness, what's the report card on them? In my case, I was CEO. So my parents got my report card in the press. My father's passed away. They got it in the press. What is a report card for all of my other executives who are not yet CEO in the public eye? Do they go back and tell their parents exactly what they do? Have they told their parents that their boss thinks they got an A+? Have they told their parents that? And I figured not. And so I decided to give their parents a great endorsement of their kids' efforts towards PepsiCo. But more importantly, just as all of the people who came to my home were thanking my mother for producing me, I thought I should thank those parents for giving me the gift of those executives, of their children to me, because I couldn't be successful without them. And now I have an independent line of communication with the parents.
PTA meetings at PepsiCo. It's sounding a bit frightening.
I have great conversations with the parents. You know, they cut these stories that they find about me, they send it to me, or if their sons or daughters say one thing negative about me, they'll say, stop, don't say anything negative about her, we love her. So it's a great relationship.
And you have time to respond? Yeah?
Absolutely. I find the time. Those are important things to do.
You know, there are those who would say that this is a kind of a female approach to doing things. And I'm wondering how irritating you find the whole gender tag tailing you in this world. And all of us deal with it as professionals in different ways. And
I don't care.
This
is how it's going to be. This is the future.
Yeah, but
this is the human side of an enterprise.
Yeah.
Too often, we've forgotten the human side of the enterprise. And I'll give you an example. I write a letter to all 285,000 of my employees every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks?
Every 2 weeks. And I send it on Thursday every 2 weeks, and I write it on the Tuesday. I just sit in my office for 15 minutes, I lock myself up. There's always one page, never more than a page. And it can be on any topic. So I've sent out so far 17 letters. And I'd say about 10 of them were on a business topic, but written in a nice way. And the other 7 have been on personal issues. There was one letter I wrote to people, it was letter 15, I think, 2 letters ago, where I wrote about the first day of school for my daughter, who's a senior in high school. And I wrote about the fact that every first day of school, my husband and I go to the bus stop at the end of the street with our cameras. We take a picture of her standing with us, in her school uniform. But this is the last day of last year of school. We went to the bus stop, at least we got ready to go to the bus stop, took out the camera, and our daughter looks at us and says, but Mom, I'm driving myself to school. We just realized our daughter has now become a little woman. Yeah. She's going to drive herself to school. What happened to the little child in a pinafore? And what happens to his mom and dad now? We've lost control. So the 2 of us retreat to the room, start to cry, saying, oh my God, what are we going to do? Then we realize time has passed so fast. And now our daughter has become a woman. We'll never recapture
those moments.
Yeah, when she clung to us and we could have her sit in the bus and wave to us till the bus went away. I wrote about that to employees and said, hey, time flies. Make sure you spend the time with your family, because when this day comes, it's going to break your heart. I write to them about this. Would a male CEO write? Maybe not. But
beyond a point, you care. You want to be evaluated on your work and not your gender.
And if people say, oh God, such a female way of running a company, I'd say you should be so lucky to have a female CEO.
I know, more power to you. But since you've spoken about the sanctity and the ephemeral nature in a sense of life, where do you see yourself 10 years from now? And before that, I have to ask you about one of the other great media myths. Successor to Ratan Tata?
Where do you come up with this?
I don't know. This is the buzz.
I mean, look, Tata is a great company, nation-building company. Ratan's a great guy. And the Tatas themselves are a phenomenal company. Unfortunately, I'm running a phenomenal company myself, and I love doing what I'm doing. So
10 years from now?
I have no idea.
2 years from now?
I hope I'm still running PepsiCo. That's what I'd like to do. 10 years from now, as I said, I'd like to give back in some shape or form, whether it's 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now. I don't know. I don't know when I'll be tired of being a CEO and want to go do something else.
You're not tired yet, clearly.
No.
Well, I think you make both India and America proud, and more power to your power and multiculturalism in general.
Thank you so much. Very nice to talk to you.
Thanks, Indra. Thank you.